And okay, cool. What's up, everybody? It says the Hangout is live. We're having a little bit of some technical issues, of course. I have Mindy on Skype with me, who's telling me if this is working or not, and so she's going to see if the feed actually comes through. However, we are having technical issues as far as having people come on as guests, so we can see their video and hear from them as well. That is not working currently, and it might be a Google issue. We've been trying to figure it out on our end, and the stuff that was there normally to invite people, special links that Google Hangouts on air had, aren't there anymore. They're making changes on their end, so I don't know what the heck is going on. I don't even know if I'm talking to nobody right now, but I currently have 0 viewers, it says. And so, Mindy, are you watching the feed and the event page? Like, is it actually going or not? Okay, so I got... that's not a bad suggestion. I hear myself on your... Okay, so I see a question from Eddie who says, trying to figure out how this works. Is this the right place to be? Eddie, we're trying to figure out how this works too. It's interesting because we've done this like half dozen times now, and it's been perfect, and now Google's making changes apparently, and it's getting really difficult to invite people on. That link that should be there is not there. I'm going to invite you back on, Mindy, just to see if it's actually starting it actually is going to help with inviting you. So I just invited you again, Mindy. Mindy, for those of you who don't know, is my lovely assistant, and I would love to see her on here with everybody else. Okay, I have 9 viewers now, which is good. 20 viewers. So I have people viewing, but we have no guests, and it's not the guest's fault. It's hopefully not my fault or Mindy's fault. It's I think Google's fault, because they're not giving us a chance to bring people on, which is crazy. So there is a potential workaround. There's a tool called Uber Conference, which will allow people to, I believe, phone in. Is that correct, Mindy? Okay, she says yes. So we're going to see if we can get Brian on to phone in. And let's see. I have the phone number for Uber. I'm going to give that to you here, Mindy. So, why is it doing that? Conference line is not connected to the Hangout. Please click to connect. I guess it's just one of those things that, you know, it works in one instance and then in another it does not. And you can test this one out. It's like the most important topics we're going to be talking about too. But he is writing a guest post for Smart Passive Income as well. As many of you know, there's a post on the blog called the Backlinking Strategy that works, and that backlinking strategy still sort of works, but that was mainly a strategy that worked really well in 2010. It's obviously 2014, and Brian's a guy who has been on my radar very recently, who's doing some amazing things in terms of backlinking and getting ranked higher in Google, and that's why I wanted to come in, have him come on for this particular call. And if this doesn't work out, don't worry, there's going to be a guest post as well. That's coming out no matter what, but I do want to try and get Brian in here so we can talk to him and do a little Q&A. We have notified him and told him that we're trying to figure out how to get him on, but again, Google is not letting us bring guests on for whatever reason, and it would be very handy if they just made things easy. I mean, this Google Hangouts on thing is amazing in terms of the technology, but a lot of the really easy stuff that should be taken care of is not yet. So Mindy is trying to connect via something called Uber Conference, which allows people to call into this Hangout, and we're going to see if that actually works. So she's testing that now before we hand that number off to Brian. Mindy, can you give us an update on that? She's calling in, and she entered the PIN, and nothing is happening. Okay. Now it's doing something different. This is Uber Conference. It's saying fetching organizer data. That didn't happen before. So you might just want to keep trying. Again, thanks everybody for your patience. Welcome to technology. This is just something that happens, and you know, you can't get really upset about it because it happens. You got to expect it and kind of roll with the punches. I've dealt with my fair share of technical issues in live presentations before, like in person, and you just got to go with what you have. So if this doesn't work out, we'll do sort of a impromptu Q&A, and then we'll go from there and hopefully get Brian back on in the future. If not, we'll do an interview together. But like I said, for those of you who just came on, Brian from backlinko.com is also doing a guest post for the Smart Passive Income podcast as well. I hear a lot of noises. Oh, is that your... Oh, that's through Skype. Okay. So we're trying to get Mindy on Uber Conference, which allows somebody to phone into a Google Hangout, and that is being tested right now before we can hopefully get Brian on in that method. I see Matthew said, Pat, do you see this? Yes, I do. Marcus and Ashley say, I can see you. I can't see you, but thank you for letting me know. That is good. At least there's people on the other end. Let's see. You're on hold. Okay, this is really funny. So Mindy's telling me that she's on hold for Uber Conference, which is, again, a tool that allows people to call into this Hangout. There is obviously something going on Google's end in terms of organizing this, which is, so it's different than it was before. So a lot more people coming in, of course, because this is a great topic, although we don't have our guest on because Google is not letting us have our guest come in, and we're trying to figure out a workaround to get him to come on. Mindy, my assistant, is on the line with me on Skype, and we're trying to figure things out. So again, thank you guys for your patience. Don't worry, the information that you are going to get, or we're going to get in this interview or Hangout is going to be reposted onto YouTube, and I'll make sure to send that out via Twitter and Facebook as well, if it does happen. If not, look forward to a guest post that is coming no matter what from Brian on SPI about backlinking strategies that work today, and he's been working on that post, and I'm really excited about that. On Uber. Okay, sorry, I'm having a conversation with Mindy at the same time. So Mindy's in the waiting room for this conference, in Uber Conference. Well, Mindy, it says fetching organizer data, and it's been saying that for the last 2 minutes. So let me try closing Uber Conference here. Maybe reopening it again. Okay, opening Uber Conference app, connecting to Hangouts, fetching organizer data. There, it says my conference line is not connected to the Hangout. Please click to connect. Okay, click. Disconnected. Your conference line is not connected. Please click to connect. Connect. Disconnected again. Connect. And it's weird. When I click connect, I can see your face there. It's like it comes up, Mindy, and then it immediately disconnects. So again, there's something else going on Google's end in terms of Hangouts. So of all times, we picked the worst time. Maybe they're working on something in Google. But in the meantime, I can still provide value for you guys. There is a Q&A app that if you're on the event page, which you could see in one of my latest tweets, at Pat Flynn, that's a link to the event page where you can then ask questions. And I guess we'll just make this an impromptu Q&A until we kind of figure things out. And I'm going to keep trying that Uber Conference thing Oh. Sorry, Mindy's talking. So Mindy and Matt are on the line with me on Skype and say that we should do a Q&A. I think just doing a general Q&A, not about anything specific, would be good because a lot of people came on about backlinking, and that's something that I'm actually very interested in as well. As many of you know, I have some old school strategies that work maybe half the time now, but Brian's been doing some amazing stuff that works now, and that's why I really wanted him on. And again, this Uber Conference thing is not allowing me to get him on. But in the meantime, we'll just do Q&A. So you can ask your questions on the event page. And Stefan says, you still look tense. Relax, we're patient, and you should be too. Besides, if you have speakers, then turn on the speakers and get Brian on Skype, and we'll be able to hear him. Well, if I turn on the speakers, I don't think that's going to be able to work. First time watching your Google Hangout live. I'm so excited. This is John. John, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. So just fire away. Ask questions. I'm here for you as much as possible. And again, while I'm doing that, I'm going to be doing something I shouldn't be doing, which is called multitasking. But I'm going to be answering your questions and also trying to figure out this figure out a way to get Brian on if possible. If not, we'll just have to do another one very soon. And of course, that will be recorded if you can't make that one. Okay, let's see, Q&A. Let's see. Bunch of questions coming in or comments. I can't even delete the questions that, I can't even select. Normally in the Q&A app, you can select a question and it goes to the top and everybody sees it. But then Google's telling me now there's an error when I do that. So of course something, like I said, is terribly wrong here. Let's see. +1, this guys, if you're also seeing the screen hang up, streaming stopped for me. So Vishal says there's some streaming issues. Judith says she can hear and see me, which is great. Open a cold beer. Oscar says, I want to share that with you right now, but let's see. No questions coming in now. So I don't know. Let me get. What can I talk about? Just sort of relaxing a little bit. Hopefully, a lot of you saw my Australia/Pro Blogger Conference recap post. That was actually really fun to write, and maybe that's what I could talk about for a little bit. I haven't been posting as much on the blog lately, and part of it is because there's been a lot of things going on, obviously, but also because I feel like every time I start a post, I have to make it the most epic post in the world, and that's actually been holding me back a lot. And when I think back to 2008, when I first started blogging, I didn't think that way. I just thought, hey, what might be helpful to my audience, and I just wrote, and I shared that message in my last post, and a lot of people emailed me directly saying, Pat, like, we want you back. And that sort of crushed my heart a little bit. And I want me back, too, in terms of providing that kind of blog content to you. Of course, I've been gung-ho on the podcast, and that will continue to stay the way it is. And I've been seeing massive results from that. But it's been interesting. I've been, when I first started, it was 3 posts a month, or a week, actually, 3 posts a week. And recently I've been doing the, 1 post a week. And then even more recently, it's been 1 or 2 posts a month, which a few people have done some data analysis. People like Derek Halpern from Social Triggers. He says it's not really about how often you write, and I agree with that. It's not about how often you write. It's what you do with what you write. But I also know that the more you create content, the more opportunities you give for people to, for example, find you on Google or share, and also just continue to hear from you as well. Matthew asks, what's the one thing you focused on today? One big thing that came out of today, which actually relates to this book, which I highly recommend everybody read. It's called The One Thing. And I love this. This is a great book. And I usually I usually listen to my books, but I actually picked this up at Barnes & Noble, and I set it right here. So it reminds me every time I should focus on one thing at a time, one project at a time, and within that one project, one thing at a time. And my big thing today was talking about the future of the editorial calendar, related to that blog stuff I just talked about. But the editorial calendar for Smart Passive Income in terms of blog content, podcast content, and also video content as well. That's another part of the 3-pronged strategy that I've been not producing for as well. And so I had a mastermind group this morning with my team. Or not my team. That was a meeting later. But I have a mastermind group that I meet with every Wednesday morning, and that's with Cliff Ravenscraft, Leslie Samuel, Mike Stelzner, who wasn't there today because he's at Content Marketing World in Cleveland, and Mark Mason from Mason World, or LateNightIM.com. And they had some great suggestions for me in terms of moving forward with my content. And I think in the future you'll see that there'll be a more structured regimen in terms of what comes out and when it comes out. The podcast has been good on that front in terms of having a new podcast come out every Thursday, weekly. And interestingly enough, part of the motivation for that is the new sponsorships on the show. I know that I have to come out every Thursday because there's a sponsor. I mean, they're depending on me to come out with an episode. I mean, they paid for it. And so implementing those types of strategies, not sponsorships, but something where I feel like I'm letting people down if I don't come out with that content on a certain day. Strategies like, letting my audience know, letting all of you know that I'm going to come out with something at a certain time. That's very important. So perhaps, and this isn't set in stone yet, but perhaps in the future you might see every Monday will be a blog post, every Wednesday could be a video, and every Friday could be a podcast episode, for example. That's just one example of that. But also in terms of production, I'm also working on stepping away from a lot of the sort of actual production type stuff in terms of editing and things like that. I still edit the Smart Passive Income podcast. It's I've been doing that since the beginning. It's what I'm used to doing, and I know I shouldn't be doing it, but I still love it, and I still have my own ways of doing it, and I sort of a little bit of am afraid of like handing that off to somebody. But I had a great team meeting with my team today, about what we could do to potentially have somebody take on that role of actually cutting and slicing and putting the episodes together so that I can just focus on the content production and the interviews and the solo shows and not focus on the, putting metadata in and even the graphics, which you've seen recently on the podcast episodes on the blog. That's all been me as well. And so handing that off is going to actually open up a lot. But also, if my team needs that stuff, like before the shows go live, if they need the information on what that episodes are about, if they need the audio files so they can produce those ahead of time and batch produce them, and if I know that their life is going to be easier if I were to batch produce and actually do those things ahead of time, then I'll be more likely to actually create those for everybody. So for blog posts, for videos, and for podcast episodes, that I think is going to help me in the future. Also recently is a big change in my life. Besides the trip to Australia, which kind of threw me off a bit, my son just started preschool. And so he is gone from the house, which is really weird. It was actually harder for me and my wife than it was for my son, even though he still has a little bit of trouble getting away too. But, I've been with him for the whole time since he was born here at home. I work from home, and so he's used to seeing me, and I'm used to seeing him. It's been tough, but it has opened up a number of hours during the day. So I'm trying to figure out what our new schedule and regimen is. I mean, I used to do most of my work at night after the kids were asleep because that's the only chance I had. But now I have this time during the day, but I have to balance that open time frame with the fact that I'm still a night owl. I do a lot of my most creative work at night. So do I force myself or try to learn how to do that stuff, during the middle of the day, or do I try to figure out what can be done during the middle of the day? I mean, I think if I were to hand off a lot of the production type stuff, it would allow me to focus on relationship building, which is obviously something I could do during the day. Reaching out to other influencers and building relationships with people in my audience and just discovering more about what my audience needs. Doing that at night is difficult because, most people are asleep. Let's see. Brian Dean actually came on. He says, Pat's crushing the Q&A. Go, Pat. Brian, sorry so much for the technical difficulties, and thanks for your flexibility. He's here in the Q&A section. He says, hey, guys, so bummed about the technical difficulties as well. So, Brian, we apologize here. This isn't your fault. This isn't our fault. This is Google doing something wacky to us here. And, I mean, we know they are always making changes, and for some reason it's just not working right now. So we'll try to get you on at some point. And again, we're all really excited about the guest post that's coming from you about backlinking, about SEO today, what's working now on the SPA podcast very soon. I'm really looking forward to that. And hey, since starting this Q&A, more viewers have come in, so that's pretty cool. Let's see, any other questions coming in? Wyatt also says, this is my first time checking out your live event. Super excited, man. P.S. I also have the same Batman shirt, and the ladies love it. Nice. Love it, Wyatt. Let's see. Eddie says, I'm writing my first ebook, and I started a new site to go with it. I don't want to start an email list because I don't think I'll have the content every 2 weeks to share. Or I'll have content every 2 weeks to share. Just ebooks every half year or so. Should I start an email list anyway? I think it's very important to start an email list no matter what business or what type of business you're creating. And I think a lot of you would agree, just because you don't think you could fill it with a newsletter every 2 weeks, you don't have to fill it with a newsletter every 2 weeks. I think just the ability to have the ability to reach out directly to your audience is very important. So you don't have to think about it like you have to reach out to them every 2 weeks. Yes, consistency is important, but it's also important to have the ability to have direct contact with your customers and potential customers. And you'll be surprised, over time you're going to find that you can fill in those gaps every 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be every 2 weeks. Perhaps it's every month. It's just 12 times a year you reach out to your audience, and it could be something that you don't have to create now. You can put it in autoresponder, and anytime before a new newsletter comes out at the end of the month, you can pour more content into that newsletter and just have it be ready and scheduled to come out over a certain period of time after people subscribe. But that constant connection to your audience through the email is very, very important. It's very personal. Email is a very personal thing. And if you were to have, it's just those are targeted people who have given you permission to contact them. So when you come out with your book, it's going to be that much easier to sell or to produce hype for. I don't want to say hype, exaggeration, or not exaggeration. Exaggeration and hype are sort of the same thing. I meant excitement and buzz. You want to create excitement and buzz, and you can better do that through your email list as well. So I think you should start an email list, and the beauty about that is using services like MailChimp and Aweber. I mean, you're paying for how big the list is, so it's not like you're going to be paying a huge amount up front. It's going to grow over time, and hopefully as it grows and as you begin to pay more for your list, like I have, you'll be utilizing that list to sell your books and keep in contact with. And it's also a great way to just get information from your audience as well. It's going to help you with the book production. Perhaps you can give your audience an insight on the production of your next book and actually get some input on it too. They're going to be more likely to be a part of it and also feel connected to you when it actually does come out, because they would have had a say in one way or another. So that's a great question. Let's see. Robin says, hey, Pat, it's great having access to you like this. My question, which of the techniques from your 2010 backlinking guide are no longer effective in your opinion? I had this like bright spot on my mouth. Can you see that? It's really funny. Anyway, let me close this window here. All right. What backlinking strategies? They're actually all still pretty effective, and and a lot of people are creating their own little blog networks. I think article writing isn't anymore. I mean, it still does work. I've seen and people have said and are still emailing me saying, wow, these strategies are still working. But I'm also getting emails from people saying, hey, Pat, like these strategies are outdated. And both are true. And it all depends on what Google feels like that day, right? Just like today on this call, like Google just decided not to make anything work, and I can't invite anybody on. So writing articles and posting them on article farms and article directories, like easing articles, that's not that I wouldn't waste time with that anymore. I mean, you're going to put a lot of effort into creating great content. You might as well post it on your own site and on other people's sites as guest posts. And guest posting still works. It's sort of coming back, and it's coming back in a different light now. It's not very beneficial in terms of SEO anymore, I don't believe. And this is, again, why I wanted Brian to come on to talk about these things. But it is still a great way to get direct traffic to your site. And, of course, having direct traffic comes to your site has many benefits in terms of, time on the site and bounce rates and things like that. So, that's why I think working on your first impression on your site is a great SEO strategy. That's something that a lot of people don't talk about, but keeping people on your site, keeping people moving through your site, having them understand that that's a place that they should be when they arrive. What is the first impression people have when they come to your site? Everybody out there watching this right now, what is it? And it can be hard to answer that on your own. You might have an idea of what that first impression might be, but that's why, again, going back to the previous question from Eddie, was just like that email list is really important, because I use my email list, or I've used it in the past to reach out to certain subscribers. And when you're just starting out, that's a great opportunity for you to have direct conversations with everybody in your audience, or as many people as you can, or a large percentage of them, to understand what goes on when people come to your site. They're going to feel special if they get a personal email from you saying, hey, I know you're subscribed to the list, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you, and I'm here for you. Is there anything I could do to help you, or what are your biggest struggles? Or like one question I asked my audience was, what was your first impression when you came on my site? That was literally what I asked them, and that's when I learned that my homepage was completely overwhelming. People didn't know where to begin, and that's where things like the Getting Started page came from, and also the redesign, and so that's really important. But a lot of people are still doing those old school strategies. I mean, we still get spam in our WordPress blogs, right? Like all of us, and we have tools like Kismet and other things to sort of take that away. But people are still doing that because, sadly, it does work still. And I would really like to see it not work anymore. But it's obvious that people are still using it. They're using incredible tools to just do all that stuff for them, which is pretty crazy. But article writing, I think, isn't as strong anymore. If you're gonna write an article, write it for a guest post who has a target audience already, not just a content forum. We've all seen the hit that those have had in the past with a lot of the updates as well. Let's see. So let me see if this will work now. Selecting the questions. Okay, good. I can select the questions and get rid of them now. Here's a question from John. He says, when are you going to start doing more YouTube videos? Very soon. I'm actually, I have a meeting with Caleb from Fizzle.co. He's going to be doing more on the video production side for other people, and his own stuff too. He has great stuff at DIYVideoGuide.com, and he lives here in San Diego with me. He's going to come over Friday, or we're going to talk on Skype. I forget which one, but I have to check my calendar. But we're going to talk specifically about the SPI video strategy. There's a lot of things I'm leaving on the table, not just in terms of potential income, but just serving you guys. Like, there's so many tools out there that are awesome that I'm not showing you how to use to the best of its ability. There's a lot of things that would be great for a little 5 to 10 minute segment in terms of marketing strategies and little SEO strategies and things like that. I mean, that is stuff that I have a YouTube channel of 30,000 plus subscribers, and I haven't uploaded a video for a tutorial or anything like that for the last like 6 months to a year. And back when I first started, I mean, YouTube was an integral part of the growth of SPI, and I've sort of let that down, or let you guys down as subscribers. But like I said, the podcast, when I found out that the podcast was the #1 way people were coming to my site, like, I just went crazy with it, and I went from bi-weekly to weekly. I have another podcast now, and so I'm trying to balance all this. I hope you could see that with my struggles in terms of content production in one area versus another, and just trying to figure everything out. Like, you're always going to be faced with issues, and you're always going to have to learn how to pivot and change and adjust, and that's sort of where I'm at now. I'm really excited, though. I'm really excited to see how the content strategy plays out in the near future, and YouTube is definitely going to be a very, very big part of that. So thank you for that question, John. I was even thinking of doing not just tutorial videos and things like that, which are obviously relevant to the audience, but little segments and shows. There's a lot of great YouTube channels out there who have these little 5 to 10 minute segments that are really interesting. I can imagine doing a segment, for example, I've thrown this idea around, where I do a video that's about, like, if I were a blank, this is how I would market myself. If I were a chef, this is how I would market myself. If I was a food truck, if I was a hairstylist, if I was a I don't know, like, just pick any business. You could fill in the blank with 100 different things there. I could share how to market those things, and pull in good examples and find out how to do that. Let's see. So I did that question already. Oh, really? Is that the deal? Sorry, guys. I'll tell you in a sec. Okay, so Mindy's telling me that Uber Conference, which is a tool that allows you to bring people onto a Hangout with you, does not work on live Hangouts. Is that what you said, Mindy? So it doesn't work for Hangouts on air, but it could work for, like, then what is the point of it? It can work for internal Hangouts. Oh, okay. So for just regular Hangouts, Uber Conference can work. Then why is it here? It's like right here for Google Hangouts on air. So, okay, that's good to know, and thanks for helping with that. So, okay, let's get back to the Q&A. This is actually pretty fun. So we got about a half hour to answer as many questions as we can. Let me see if I can sort through all these questions that are coming in. Okay, man, this will take forever too in terms of sorting. I swear I'm on a good connection too. This was a question from Brian Burt. He says, "Hey Pat, just bought the Blue Yeti Pro. What's your opinion on that mic? What software do you use for your podcast?" Which I love, by the way, my man. Thank you for listening to the show. This is like Ask Pat, like on steroids, right here. I just figured out. I feel like I'm doing Ask Pat right now, except it's live. It's pretty cool. So if you want to check out my podcasting tutorial, it goes over all the things in terms of how to set up a podcast and what I think about different mics. I don't review the Blue Yeti mic, the Blue Yeti Pro on there, and I think that's a fairly new one that came out that I haven't done or reviewed yet or tested out, but I hear a lot of good things about it. The one I recommend for everybody, if you're just starting out, if you haven't already bought something like you did, Brian, is the ATR 2100 from Audio-Technica. So again, Audio-Technica ATR 2100, and Mindy just flashed hers on her Skype screen. It's great. It sounds amazing. It sounds just like this one right here, which is a Heil PR40, except this is about $300 to $350. The ATR 2100 is $60 on Amazon. It's a great mic. And as far as software, I continue to use GarageBand. I switched from the old version to the new version. Both still work really well. However, I know a lot of people who also record on Audacity, which is another free tool you could use if you don't have a Mac and you have a PC. You can record on Audacity. And Adobe Audition, right, Mindy? That's like the pro one that some people use, although it's really expensive. Reamer? Reaper. Oh, okay. Mindy tells me Reaper is another one. Mindy's on the line with me on Skype, and that's $60, and that one's really good too, she says. So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks, Brian. Okay, I can't. It's not letting me complete these actions here in the Q&A. Okay, Cameron asks or says, I still can't get people to come from my podcast to my site or social media, even though I'm getting hundreds of downloads. Is there a special way to promote it, or say, give me feedback? So the goal here is to get people back to your site, and that's what you're struggling with, it seems, Cameron. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. The biggest thing that a lot of people, or the biggest mistake I see a lot of people do is, it's obvious. You want to give calls to actions to come back to your site, right? Well, that's important. But I see a lot of people giving too many directions to people listening to their podcast. They say, okay, go to this site for this and go to this site for that, or come here, and all of a sudden by the end of the show, because people are listening into their car, you mentioned like 6 URLs to visit and 6 landing pages, and then they're not going to remember any of them. I think 1 or 2 calls to actions and URLs to really hone in on in terms of having your audience visit your back to your webpage is max. 2 max. That's it. Whether it's your show notes or a specific link to a landing page like a giveaway or something. That could be a cool thing to do and experiment with, Cameron. Create a nice little resource PDF, maybe the top 5 tools to do whatever it is your audience needs to do. People love tools. This is something that Clay Collins mentioned in the last couple episodes of the SPI podcast he's been on. People love tools. People feel like when they get the tools, they'll have the same results as a lot of people who are using those tools. And so if you create a guide, say, for example, the top 5 tools to do this, you can put that in a little PDF file, have images, even have links in there as well to help people out, make it look a little nice. But you don't have to have like an 80-page PDF. That's, I think, where a lot of people feel like they have to have, in the giveaway, have it be 80 pages. That was the trend back in the day. Now the trend is to have these really short, really useful, easily consumable giveaways, and you can give that away at the end of your podcast. For example, I think Internet Business Mastery gives away a free audio guide, or free video guide, or free audio gift, sorry. And they even say, hey, go to freeaudiogift.com, that's a domain they bought, and to get your free gift to help you do XYZ. So you could say that at the end of your podcast, and that can help drive people back to your site. In order to get that gift, people will have to subscribe to your list. And of course, if you have the copy on there, that's great and enticing. People are going to subscribe, and then they're in your email list. And every time you come out with a new post or podcast episode, you can send them a link on their email, and it's right there. And that's going to help drive traffic back to your site, which will help increase the amount of shares, which will help increase the amount of people coming to your email list. And it's just a nice little loop from there. So experiment with giving people incentive or reasons to come back to your site. A show notes page is great because people want to get the links and resources that are mentioned in the show or in the interview that you have, but a specific giveaway for that specific episode. Even if you want to get really ninja about it, some of the trends now that sort of Lead Pages is leading the way on is having these unique giveaways for each individual episode or each individual blog post. So for them specifically, they give away the template that has been reviewed or talked about to their audience in HTML, and then it's really smart. People get the HTML file, but if they want to get it and have it really easy to use, they can subscribe to Lead Pages and get it there. But the point is, you can give away a unique sort of freebie for a specific episode. So if you did an episode, for example, on mastering memory, this is something that I'm really big on right now, is trying to remember all the names of people I see and things like that. And there's a lot of cool strategies and tips. If you give away, if that was your podcast episode, for example, let's say you interviewed a guy named Jim Quick, Kwik, who has some amazing stuff. If you interviewed him and then created a giveaway that said top 5 tools and tips for memorizing people's names within the first 10 seconds after you meet him, and then remembering it the next day, something like that. You can download that PDF, and again, that's specific for that episode. People get on your email list, and then you can get more traffic from there. So I kind of said the same thing twice, but I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Can I select these questions? Yes, there we go. This is fun. Let's see, 49 viewers. Thank you guys for staying on and dealing with all the technical issues. If you just come on, we weren't able to get Brian on because Google's not allowing it for some reason. There's been a lot of technical issues in terms of the Google Hangouts on there right now. I can't even have Mindy come on to help, which she usually does come on to help for. So again, like I said, we're going to reschedule this interview or the Hangout with Brian, and then we're also going to have him write a guest post. He's actually, I don't know if he's done yet, but he's near completion of that guest post about backlinking strategies that work today, like 2014, and that's going to go live on SPI very soon. But currently, it's just not working. I can't bring any guests on. It's crazy. Okay, so a few more questions, or actually, there's a lot more questions. This is awesome. So let's see. John asks, or you asked that question on AskPat. Maybe I'll check it out on AskPat. Here's another one from John. With Aweber, you pay depending on how many people are on your list. If you have 5,000 people on the list and only 3,000 open your emails, why pay for the others? Maybe they changed emails, maybe they died, maybe they turned amish. Why pay for those on the list? That's just their payment structure. And I think it's your job as a person who owns an email list to clean out that list every once in a while and to sort of do audits on your list, you know, and I know some people who every once in a while they say, hey guys, if you still want to continue to get this content, like click here, which subscribes them to a new list in Aweber or Infusionsoft or whatever tool you use, and then they just completely delete the other list because they know that people who are on that new list are those highly targeted people who will take action. And again, like you, John, they don't want to pay for the people who aren't taking action. It's hard because why aren't people opening those emails? It could be your own fault in terms of not creating a subject line that is enticing. You know, people get tons of emails every day. Is your subject line going to stand out? Maybe it's the time that you send those emails. The time that you send those emails matters as well. Are you keeping track of it? Everybody, you should be keeping track of when you send emails out and seeing what time is the best. For me specifically, I have a lot of people who are in the office when they are sort of online, which is interesting. But sending emails out at noon Eastern is really good. That's around 9 p.m., which is sort of like a good hour during the West Coast time. People, you know, just getting to work and checking their emails, and sort of my email will pop in at the top at that point. And it's also lunchtime for people on the East Coast. So 12 noon Eastern is a good time that works for me, but I only know that since I've been sending emails out since day one of the email list, which was started in 2009. So, yeah, you don't want to be paying for dead emails, and a great way to do that is just to, you know, you can audit your list in that way, like I just talked about. You can, I mean, also make sure that, and with Aweber specifically, and I'm not exactly sure in other email providers, but even if people unsubscribe, you're still paying for them, which is kind of crazy, and you know, I guess it sort of makes sense because you might want to ping them or get them back on the list at one point or another. But when people unsubscribe, they want out, right? So you shouldn't be paying for those, but they keep them there in their database, and you should be manually deleting those, or having an assistant go in weekly or monthly to delete all those unsubscribes. And you can go to your subscriber list, and you can go to stop status, and unsubscribe, and then that'll create that list for you of people who have unsubscribed. Again, that's stop status, and then you can just delete those people. Then you don't have to pay for them. So that's a quick, easy way to save a few dollars or shave a few dollars off your bill. Let's see. Pat, can you share your view on setting goals and how goals helped you get to where you are? This is from Peter. I met Peter over in Australia at the Pro Blogger Conference. So thank you for the question, Peter. Again, can you share your view on setting goals and how goals helped you get to where you are? Well, a goal is like if you're going to drive somewhere, you put your goal. It's like the address in your GPS. If you don't have that address in there, if you don't know where you're going, like you're just going to drive around and waste gas and wear out your tires, right? Like you want to know where you're going, and that's what a goal is to me. It's how you understand what actions to take to get to that goal. And the thing about goals is it's you know, you want to create big goals for yourself, but it can be scary, it can be overwhelming. That goal might seem so far ahead in the future. So the point is you want to take that big goal and break it down, sort of almost reverse engineer that goal. Okay, what would it take to get, you know, near to finishing that goal? Okay, what would it take to get me to there, and then keep working backwards till you can get to that next step. And then that next step becomes that one thing that you work on. And it's incredible when you break your goals down into those very, very small little chunks that you could finish in a day or even in an hour. It just motivates you like mad. There's a really cool example here in this book, again, by Gary Keller, The One Thing, he talks about how important it is to just focus on that small little goal. When you think of a domino, right? Imagine like 1,000 dominoes lined up, and you just lightly tap that first one, and then like they all go, right? Because one sort of hits the other and then hits the other, and it keeps going. Like, imagine how many joules of energy is actually created from that, just that little tiny tap at the beginning, right? Like, think about that, but then also think about this. You know, a domino can knock over a domino that's 1.5 times bigger than itself. So if you had one that was, for example, an inch tall, it can knock over one that's like 1.5 inch, and so on and so forth. By the 57th domino, just 57 dominoes later, that's a domino that reaches that's as tall as from the Earth to the Moon. Like, isn't that nuts? So with a little 1-inch tapping of that 1 inch, you could knock over a domino that's as tall as from the Earth to the Moon. Now, you wouldn't want to do that because you'd crush a whole bunch of people or create this massive tidal wave. But the point is, massive results don't necessarily require massive action. I mean, it does require massive action, but it requires the right action. And sometimes it's just a really small, correct action that could set forth that streak of success. And so, think about that. And so, big goals, break them down into small goals, and try to find out what that little next tap is for your first domino. And you're going to see sort of the domino effect happen in terms of win after win after win. And bigger win after bigger win after bigger win, too. So, great question. Let's see. Another person opened a cold beer. That's awesome. John also said, I got the audiobook of The One Thing, and I like it. Okay, it's hard to hear because anytime anyone votes up one of the questions, it sort of resets and goes back to the top, and then I have to re-scroll. This is like crazy. Okay, here we go. This is a question from Marcus and Ashley. My website seems to have a high bounce rate from searches from Google. What can I do about it? We blog about marriage, but our URL has family, not marriage in it. Thank you. So I don't think the URL the URL specifically might not have a lot to do with your bounce rate. I mean, it could help a little bit in terms of when people visit your site, they're like, oh, well, the URL is different. I don't think that's actually happening. I think what actually happens is people go to your site. I mean, the reason bounce rate is so high typically is when people, and especially from Google, is they have a certain expectation when they get to your site. And when they're not met with what they were looking for based on that search result, they're going to leave. And so the idea is to understand what search terms people are coming to your site for, what pages are people landing on from those search terms, and then having an idea of sort of based on that, what people are looking for, and then what people get when they get to those pages. And so you can increase the amount of time people stay on your site, therefore lowering your bounce rate by matching the expectations that people have when they come to your site and then what is actually there. So step by step, that kind of looks like this. You go to Google Analytics, and perhaps you find your most visited pages. And then you go to those pages, and then you find out how people are getting there and what keywords people are using to land on those pages. And it might be really interesting to find out what those words are, because it might just be certain words that aren't even necessarily targeted inside your title. It could be some subtitles or long tail keywords that are within that post. And then trying to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's brand new to your site, who doesn't know anything about your brand, and what are the first impressions. Again, going back to the first impressions on your site, relevant to that particular search. When people search for something in Google, I mean, you know this, when you search for something in Google, you want the answer. And if they're not getting the answer or that information right away, they're going to leave. So are you providing them with what they're looking for right away? And I've actually seen a lot of people in the past do this, where they know that they have pages on their site that are being found mostly by Google. And they'll lower the bounce rate by actually putting in a message in from there saying, hey guys, if you're coming from Google, awesome, this post is going to help you do this, 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 and this. And that's related completely to the search terms that people are finding that page on. And then people are more likely to stick around and keep reading. A lot of times what happens, and just think about it, if a person comes to your site, they look around, they're like, okay, I'm looking for the specific answer. You have like 7 seconds before they leave. So are you in 7 seconds giving them exactly what they want? Jonas asks, and I addressed this earlier, but I'm happy to address it again. What do you think about link building via guest posts? I think it's a strategy that is timeless. Not for SEO, and we know that some recent updates have sort of devalued the links coming from guest posts, which is interesting. However, the value of having a guest post on a site that has a targeted audience that matches yours and a direct link that can have traffic come back to your site, I mean, that's going to be timeless. That's going to be something that is going to be incredibly valuable for your brand, especially if you're just starting out. And then what happens from there is new people find you, and then new people who have perhaps blogs in around the same niche, they're going to find you as well, and they're going to link to you naturally. And that just sort of, that's why I think guest posting is an extremely important strategy, maybe even now more than ever because of what's been going around in terms of Google and SEO. So those are my feelings on it, and I hope that you consider that as a part of your strategy, especially if you're just starting out. And that's why relationship building is really important. That's why getting out of the online space and getting into the offline world and meeting with people at conferences, and that's been huge for me in terms of building relationships with other people who then I strike a friendship with, and they link to my stuff and I link to theirs, and as a result of all that, I naturally just start to rank higher in Google, but I also, and even more importantly, get direct traffic from people who have the same target audience. That's how I've been able to expand my sort of audience base from there. Let's see. A great question, Jonas. I answered this one as well. From Peter. It's weird. I wonder if Google would ever just have like a regular chat room style situation going on with Google Hangouts on air. I think that would open up a lot of possibilities for them. But I don't work there, so. Let's see. Happy to answer more questions. Keep them coming. We got, wow, it's over almost 6 already. I'll stay on for 10 more minutes and would be more than happy to answer as many questions as I can. Of course, we're going to get Brian back on. For those of you who have come on late here, I was not able to get Brian on because Google and Google Hangouts on Live just didn't give me the links, and it's just, it's different than the way it was before when I've had guests on. I've invited Mindy, my assistant, to come on, and she can't even come on as well. There's something wrong with Google and their back end, as funny as that sounds. So thank you for dealing with today, and we're going to have Brian back on in the future, of course, and we'll schedule offline and try to figure that out to try and get you back on. And just follow me on Facebook and Twitter to get more information about that. It will be recorded, but again, also look forward to a guest post from Brian on the Smart Passive Income blog about backlinking strategies that work today. A lot of you know I have that post from 2010 that did really well. There's like 4,000 comments on it, which is crazy. I suspect this one from Brian coming on very soon in the next week or two, or maybe within the month, is going to be extremely popular. And so, I'm happy to, give exposure to Brian and to a very relevant audience, obviously. But I'm even more happy because we're going to be providing a lot of value for you as somebody who's following along and who wants to get their websites ranking higher. What's working today? Well, Brian's going to answer that. Let's see. Nick says, "Hi, Pat." What's up, Nick? In all caps, too. Akila says, "Pat, I have a niche site that helps people open a type of business. How do you recommend introducing paid products and coaching services? People say they need help, but when I put up classes..." Oh, where did it go? See, every time I put up every time somebody answers or puts up a new question, it kind of scrolls down. Have a niche site that helps people open a type of business. How do you recommend introducing paid products and coaching services? People say they need help, but when I put up classes and programs, not many buy. Well, there might be a lot of reasons why people aren't buying, and I think what really comes down to, and what you should be doing if you're just starting out, especially in something like that, is you want to work closely with a small group of people and give them special access to you. If you're providing value and you're proving your authority and you're talking about all this stuff that they're interested in, you could give them special access, and you can have it be based on a scarcity model where you perhaps maybe take only 10 people. Hey guys, there's only 10 people coming in, special price. I'm going to be working one-on-one with you for the next 4 weeks to help you do or build whatever this type of business is. This is something I've seen a lot of people do. I've done it myself in the past. For instance, Cliff Ravenscraft, he has a very successful podcasting course right now called Podcasting A to Z. I highly recommend it. It's like he holds your hand all the way through. He gives you access to him 24 hours for 4 weeks. But then what's cool is after that it's closed. But the way he started that was he took a small group of people and worked with them very closely, gave them a special deal on that price because it was the first round. But essentially, they helped create that course for him because he was working so closely with those people up front, and they felt special because they were getting direct access to Cliff, but he was just loving it because he was getting direct access to his customer base and actually having them shape each lesson and each part of the course and be able to answer questions that he would then include in his lessons later on. And then now it's just almost automatic for him in terms of providing that content. It's all there. All the questions that anybody could ever ask are already there and provided because he's been working closely. And then from there, after you finish that first session with that small group of people, again, who would be interested to work with you, even if it's just 3 people, those 3 people, if successful, become case studies and testimonials for you when you release your product. You'll already have the videos and lesson plans or an idea of them, and then just you could fine-tune them when you release them to the public. And like I said, you have those case studies and people there to start marketing it for you as well. So there's a lot of things there that you could do, but that's sort of 80-20 and something that a lot of people are doing as well. And that also helps validate your product as well. If you start to promote that and nobody wants it, maybe that's not what you should be offering. Maybe it's something else. So it's a way for you to validate your product and also create it at the same time, and even get paid for it before you create it, which is pretty amazing. This is a question from Daniel. He says, you had Alex Becker on a video interview before. You have been following his strategies for ranking websites with PBN. I had Alex on a video, and that was part of my research process leading up to Niche Site Tool 2.0, which has been going very well recently. I have a post coming out very soon about the success of the launch of our first product, the book for how to start a food truck, and it's been doing pretty well. But that video with Alex, he talked a lot about strategies that were sort of on the line between black and gray, or even gray and white, that a lot of people were just like, whoa, why do you have this guy on? And it works, and a lot of people have been using his stuff, and it's working for them as well. It is risky, and it's not really what Google wants, but it is working, and that was one area of SEO I wanted to explore to see what people were doing that were working. I also had Neil Patel on, who had a completely different strategy, Neil Patel from QuickSprout, and so I sort of used that as a way to sort of see what was working out there, and then I could choose the sort of methods I liked and wanted to use and didn't want to use. But I haven't been using any of his private blog networks or PBN strategies. I know Glenn Alsop has been doing that and doing it very well, I believe. He talks about that on viperchill.com. So, there was a lot of stuff about, I think there was a site called Build My Rank. I can't even remember, that was such a long time ago. Build My Rank and other private blog networks where you could just pretty much pay a monthly fee and they'll do all the work for you with their own private networks of blogs and link back to your site and help you get rankings. Like, those sites were just completely nailed by Google and just completely deranked and penalized. And Google was making a public statement there. Hey, you shouldn't do public blog networks. Look what happened to these guys. But they can only do so much, and their algorithm's not perfect, so people are taking advantage of that hole right now. Techman Sedix says, "Hi, I want to ask you about forum posting. Do you still think that it's still safe?" Well, if you do it in a natural way, if you naturally post in forums and provide value, you can totally benefit from it. I mean, I wouldn't do forum postings just for backlinking purposes. I wouldn't do anything like that, like commenting and just leaving URLs without actually providing any value. But forum posts for backlinking purposes, if it's natural and you are providing value, I mean, I'm all for it. And plus, you're able to build authority and provide help for people and get word of mouth through forum posting as well. I mean, I had a lot of success on a forum when I first started in the architecture world with my lead exam site. I became very popular in a forum because I was answering questions. But as a result of that, people were like, oh, let me check more out from this guy named Pat who has a nice little link in the footer of each of his posts, a little signature. Okay, I'm going to answer 3 more questions because we're already at the top of the hour. But like I said, thank you guys for staying on. This has been a fun little session here, even though it wasn't planned because we meant to have Brian on, but there were some technical difficulties. Google was not allowing that to happen. Let's see. So here's another question from Cameron. He says, so this is one of 3 before I let you guys go. He says, what is the one thing you implemented that has had the biggest impact on your business, such as a giveaway or starting a podcast or creating a YouTube video? Fantastic question. There's a lot of things that I've done that have worked really well. There's a lot of things I've done that really haven't worked very well. But I think the one big thing, and I think this is going to sound obvious once I say it, is the podcast. And that's why I've been going really, really strong with it lately. It's because I am seeing the best results from it in terms of not just traffic, not just, whenever I recommend something, people are quick to, go through those links and help me out and things like that, but just in terms of the actual connection that I have with my audience. Every time I go to a conference, everybody says, Pat, like, I love your podcast. I listen to your podcast all the time. Podcast. Nobody talks about my YouTube videos. Nobody talks about my blog anymore. It's all about the podcast. And they remember stories like that I don't even remember saying. They're like, oh, remember that one time on your podcast you said this? I'm like, what episode was that in? And, they're like creating this real connection with me. And everybody I talk to always says the same thing. They say, Pat, I feel like I know you. There's something about the power of the voice. So if, that's why I think podcasting is huge. That's why a lot of people are getting into it now. Tim Ferriss just created his podcast and he's rolling with it now. And it's still just starting out. I definitely think even though podcasting's been around for a while, it's now people are starting to see the benefit and the value of doing that. And so I would recommend at least experimenting with that if you haven't yet. You can go to podcastingtutorial.com to check that out and get free information on how to start. So thank you, Cameron. All right, 2 more questions. Let's see. It's hard to find the order to this because it keeps shooting back up to the top. There's one from Gary, which I'm not going to count, but I sort of half answered it already. He says, Pat, do you use your own PBNs or private blog networks to rank your sites? No. Food Trucker, for example, has just ranked really high for a lot of relevant keywords on its own, and mainly through just writing a lot of great content. We have a great writer, Nicole, who's been doing some amazing stuff and creating great blog series that are very shareable, and, not so much shareable, but just linkable and very helpful. People have been talking about it word of mouth, and Google just naturally over the course of this past year has ranked the site really high for terms like food truck business plan, how to start a food truck, which is the same name as our book. So a lot of good things coming without using private blog networks. All right, 2 more questions. Let's see. Oh, maybe there. Have you had any luck with rank increases due to switching to HTTPS? It's a question from Tyler. I actually don't know much about that. I am not a very technical person, and so I know that that's sort of the secure. It's a more secure way of having people go through your site and stuff like that. But that's about the extent of my answer. I have no idea what is going on and how, if at all, that's helping. So I apologize, Tyler. We might have to have somebody like one of our developers, Brian, come on to talk a lot about the security features and things like that. Speeding up your website. That would actually be really good. Mindy, perhaps we can take note of that. How do we speed up our site? That might be a good hangout to do in the future. And maybe just make it a completely technical thing, trying to make technical things much easier to listen to. So Akila says and followed up with, thank you so much for answering. I actually just started a little class like that last week. Didn't get the full 10 people, but glad to know I'm on the right track. Awesome. Keep up the great work. David says, okay, here's question number 2. I can't even select it. He says, Pat, when are you moving to Australia to live? I'm sure the wife and kids would love it, and I would too. I missed you in Queensland by 1 week. What were your thoughts on Australia, the place and the people? I love it. If I had to move out of the U.S. for whatever reason, I would move to Australia, either Melbourne, because I love Melbourne, and for those of you who are in the U.S., it's pronounced Melbourne. They make fun of you if you say Melbourne, like I used to do. I was corrected like 45 times while I was there. But I love Queensland. Gold Coast is amazing, and it was very kid-friendly when I was there. And so if I had to, whatever reason, move out of the U.S., I would move to Australia for sure. People are quite friendly and fun to listen to. I love listening to the accent. And it's really weird because when I started, everybody at the Pro Blogger conference was Australian. Mindy's shown a little image on her Skype of Australia right now, actually. A giant schoolroom map. She collects maps and has them all around her space in her house, in her place, which is really cool. But it was really cool, not really cool. It's just weird that this happened. As I started talking to everybody, because I was answering questions and talking to people after my keynote, I was there for like 4 days at the conference, or 3 or 4 days. I started saying no the same way Australians say it. I caught myself a few times. I was saying nar. It sounds like nar, and it's really weird. You make a weird face when you do it. No offense to anybody who's Australian out there, but I just found myself doing it, and I'm losing it now, and I want to get it back because it was pretty cool. But anyway. Thanks, David. And one more question. I won't count this one either, but it has to do with Back to the Future, so I'll let it pass. Jack asks, did you end up getting that Marty McFly hoverboard I linked to from eBay? John Wolf. Oh, John from St. Louis. I haven't yet, but it is on my wish list. My birthday's coming up actually in December. All right, and then last question. This is a good one from Eddie. He says, if you had $100 to start promoting a new niche website, what would you use it for? These are always great questions. Like, and $100 isn't really that much, and so it's interesting. I would use $100 to start an email list with the niche site that I have. But in terms of marketing it and promoting it, I wouldn't waste $100 on advertising right away without actually having something to advertise for. You don't want that traffic that's coming from paid advertising to just bounce, and you want to have people come to your site for a specific reason. Like if you're selling something, what I think I would do was I would pay somebody in that same niche time to talk to them. I think that's what I would use $100 for. Like, hey, could I borrow? And you might not even need to pay money for this, but if I'm getting into a specific niche, I want to talk and build a relationship with the other people who are in that niche, so I can understand more about what they're doing to provide value, so I can understand more about just them and what kind of person they are, so I can see how I can help them. And the more you can get into your niche that way, like this is stuff that you don't really hear about in terms of promoting your own site. Is we all talk about SEO and things like that, but what about trying to get your relationships better with the other people who are in your niche, so you can work together to serve that particular audience and maybe build a relationship they might be able to link to in the future. If I had to spend $100 on something, I would spend it on a keyword research tool just to make my life easier in terms of finding out all the information about what people are typing into Google about that particular niche. Something like Longtail Pro or Market Samurai. If I had to pick one, I would pick Longtail Pro. It's a little bit cheaper. You can get a discount actually if you go to smartpassiveincome.com/longtailpro, but I'm not here to sell to you. So I think keyword research is very important and some way to organize the content that I'm going to be creating as well for that particular site. So that's what I would spend my $100 on. Not so much promotion because it's new, but in terms of strategy for preparing. If you have 8 hours to cut down a tree, you're going to spend the first 6 hours sharpening your axe, and that's what keyword research and that sort of stuff is all about. So I would spend money on that part. It's going to help you much more in the future instead of just spending $100 up front. And there are a lot of great-looking websites. You might think, oh, we'll spend $100 on a great-looking website. Well, it's mainly about the content and what you're writing. You could focus on the design and things like that later. The logo is not that important right at the beginning. Just the content and how you can serve. What are the problems, issues, and pains that people have, and what can you do to provide content for them to help them solve those problems? Content, whether it's free or in a paid course or in an affiliate relationship with another company. What are those things? You have to know what those are. Okay, there's a lot of talking, and I went over a little bit because we had some technical issues in the beginning. But again, thank you all for watching and sitting in on this impromptu sort of Q&A. Few people on Twitter saying thank you to everybody out there. If I didn't answer your question, you can go to askpat.com and answer or ask a question there, and you might get a free t-shirt out of it there as well. I hope I didn't waste anybody's question here who didn't get a free t-shirt, but you can always ask something similar or a different question on askpat.com. Thanks, Mindy, who's off the Hangout, but on Skype with me, who's been helping me and trying to help me figure out what these issues were. But I guess we've just determined it's a Google issue right now, because we've tried all the ways to invite other people on and just nothing's working right now. So again, thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the blog. A monthly income report for both July and August are coming very soon. Podcast episode coming out very soon as well. And so look out for more information and more blog posts in the future from me too. I'm just going to write. I know great stuff's going to come out of it. It doesn't have to be epic, but a lot of it will be epic as a result of just writing. So kudos to you, all of you, for staying on and watching till the end. Love you all, and I'll see you in however you choose to consume SPI content. I'll see you there. Peace.